table.
Exchanging knowledge and friendship.
Dieses berühmte Eselsohr, was man sich machen möchte.
It's one of the building stones of our culture, of any culture, of culture in general.
Ja,
Well, this trailer has a very good base, as you may have heard, because the wooden construction, which may not have been fully screwed together, it's reinforced by that. So very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen from the media, dear friends. Let me welcome you very warmly to the press conference of the 76th Frankfurt Book Fair. I'm Torsten Casimir, and I'm the spokesman for this fair. What's in store for you today, on this morning? If I say you, I mean you at a special place, at the Frankfurt Pavilion, where we're going to have most of the cultural, political program staged, and also the ladies and gentlemen who are watching us on the live stream, which has been switched on. So welcome to all of you, online and offline. So what's in store for you? First of all, we'll have a keynote on the situation of reading and the book market by Karin Schmidt-Friderichs, who is the president of the Association of the German Booksellers and Publishers Association. After her, we'll have Juergen Boos speaking to you, who is going to introduce the cultural political program to you, and also he will highlight a few other important bits, highlights of this Frankfurt Fair, which is going to happen this week. And also by tradition, by good tradition, we always have an internationally renowned writer speaking on this stage. And this year we have found someone, a writer, who is going to do the job for us. And I'm very grateful that Elif Shafak has followed our invitation and is going to speak to us.
With us here, you arrived just in time, not too early, no waste of time. It's good to travel this way, and so great that you are with us and you will speak to us later. Danach,
after her, there's time for you, for your questions and comments. And before we get started with the program, there's two further remarks for information sources. We've got our digital press folder. You will find everything from young adult to Goethe's Italian travel. So anything which is going to happen this week can be researched there. And the second thing is a new thing for you. We decided to offer press tours for you, for people who have not been here before so often, or who are elder statesmen who still think they will learn something new when they are guided by experts around the fair here. There are two tours tomorrow morning at 9:30 in the Frankfurt studio in Hall 4, which is going to take about 1 hour. That's for accredited journalists. And now, finally, the stage is yours, Karin, Mainz publisher, and for some years she's been the president of the German Association of Booksellers and Publishers. Karin.
Thank you, Torsten Casimir. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the press, dear Elif Shafak, dear Juergen Boos, so dear book enthusiasts, in a few hours from now, I will use the almost 200-year-old ivory mallet to open the 76th Frankfurt Book Fair. As you know, the world's largest marketplace for books. The festival of ideas, reading, love of books, diversity, and encounters. The Agora of dialectical exchange in mutual respect. The location where different opinions meet without clashing. The event where debate is cultivated, freedom of opinion is practiced, and the stage is set for discourse, among others, this stage. But it is also an event where clear distinction is made between fact and fiction, and where fake news, also known as lies, have short legs because no manipulative bots are up to mischief here, but rather a culture of people and the ideas coming together. Books still inspire people, and even more so right now. Be it because people want to immerse themselves in stories, discover new things, open up new worlds of knowledge, or be it to form their own opinion or test it on the basis of carefully researched and clearly formulated background information. And these are but 4 reasons for book enthusiasm. I'm extremely pleased that many young readers in particular are in absolute reading fever. They find their reading impulse online. Social media is teeming with book recommendations, and they spare neither expense nor effort, neither waiting times nor the weight of their book conquests. They buy and read books. A third of readers under the age of 30 find inspiration and ideas on TikTok, Instagram, and the like. And even more often, and I'm proud to say so, the spark of book enthusiasm is ignited in the local bookshop. Analog and digital are not mutually exclusive. Getting inspired online, buying the book in printed form, having it signed by their favorite author at the book fair, and sharing it enthusiastically under the hashtag BookTok, this generation moves naturally between analog and digital. And before you ask, I will tell you, overall sales with books after the first 3 quarters, Torsten, Casimir mentioned it, is slightly ahead of previous year, so at a very stable level. Other industries do not see this picture. This is also because new adult and young adult, these areas are growing. And important to mention is the so-called Kulturpass for 18-year-olds, which Minister of State for Culture Claudia Roth launched 2 years ago. And with over 2 million reservations, of which over 1 million were for books alone, the Kulturpass has proven to be a low threshold entry and re-entry into the diverse world of culture, of reading. And an appeal you may spread, this successful initiative should definitely be continued. Even in times of tight budgets, we must not cut back on culture and reading promotion. And we must not forget that 1 in 4 children still leaves elementary school without being able to read properly. We mustn't forget this, and this has not changed for years. The educational crisis in our country continues to grow, and politicians are largely turning a blind eye here. I deplore this not only as chairwoman of the German Publishers and Booksellers Association, but above all, out of concern for our society and economy. After all, literacy is the basis for social participation and economic stability. Literacy, however, is also the basis for democratic maturity. Only if you understand what is written in the election manifesto, i.e. those who can look behind the scenes of pithy election promises, can vote responsibly and co-shape our society. Resilient democracy is only possible if citizens can form an informed opinion on political issues. If consideration is now being given to shrinking cultural reporting in public broadcasting even further as part of the state treaty reform, this is a fatal step in the wrong direction. We need cultural channels like RT and Dreisat, the 2 TV channels, because culture can only achieve its effects, open up perspectives, and stimulate debate if it is being discussed. Against the background of current developments, cultural and socio-political issues should be addressed and discussed more intensely rather than cutting channels, TV and radio channels, and slots for these. Thank you. Now, this brings me back to the book fair. In just a few hours, we will be opening a festival of diversity. People from all continents and over 100 nations will meet. People of different attitudes, opinions, religions, people of different sexual orientations and political persuasions, and they will meet here peacefully. This is Frankfurt Book Fair's tradition. The exhibition ground will become an agora for the diversity of opinions and, what is even more important, a meeting place for exchange of opinions. Frankfurt Book Fair has always celebrated diversity. It's part of its DNA. It demands respect for others and their opinions. Based on this clarity, the Frankfurt Book Fair is a place of dialectical exchange and democracy filled with life. Prejudices and thought patterns are a hindrance. But excessive subjective vulnerability, a type of victim thinking or self-limiting thought models, make constructive discourse impossible, fronts quickly harden, and all of a sudden there are misunderstandings. This makes it all the more important that we foster open debate and diversity of opinion at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Open exchange and doing it across boundaries of interest and companies is also part of the German Publishers and Booksellers Association philosophy. Founded in 1825, it celebrates its 200th anniversary next year. And this makes our association the oldest trade association in Germany. We are proud of it. Next year, we will continue the history of the association and the book industry under the heading New Chapters. We will be discussing and tackling the key issues of the future for book and culture industry in various formats, and the highlight will be a major congress in Berlin. This is a spoiler. So save the date, June 5th and 6th, 2025. Tickets and information are now available. No, tomorrow will be available online, not yet. Of course, AI is also one of the topics of the future for the industry and society. Artificial intelligence offers many opportunities, including for publishers, bookshops, and logistics. The so-called AI can provide support and assistance, simplify processes, and stimulate content. What it cannot do as yet, writing surprising, irritating, touching, inspiring texts, and this is unlikely to change anytime soon. It's the authors we are looking forward to seeing here at the book fair, as well as their translators who inspire us with their human intelligence, their creativity, and linguistic artistry. Their creativity will make the coming days the highlight of the book year. And this creativity has to be rewarded. This is why I'd like to point out clearly and unambiguously a fact that is often overlooked or suppressed when we work with generative artificial intelligence such as ChatGPT. When we work with these AI tools and create text and visual worlds, the capabilities of these systems are based on the biggest data theft in history. Copyrighted, protected texts and images have been and are being used millions of times without the consent of the authors and without payment of fees as training material for AIs. This is not acceptable. We need clear rules. The European AI Act is a first step in the right direction, but many points are still pending. Overall, we are only at the beginning of a long and important debate that we need to have as an industry, but even more so as society. What role should AI play in our lives? How do we shape the rules and framework conditions as an industry and as a society? These are the questions we are asking ourselves, and these are the questions we discuss at this book fair and in the following ones, also in the parliaments, and if necessary, before the judges of this world. Unfortunately, things are less forward-looking in German authorities. Sounds dry, but it's part of everyday life and important here. Increasing verification and reporting obligations, such as supply chains, product safety, and packaging channels, are paralyzing bookshops, publishers, and book logistics specialists, and we need this for selling books. A drastic example that fits the book fair as a marketplace for rights and licenses. When publishers and authors from abroad despair that despite double taxation agreements, they have to spend weeks preparing documents for the German tax authorities, and have to hand in documents they do not need to submit in any other country. And then instead of 3 months, as laid down by law, they have to wait up to 20 months for a decision. They consider selling their rights to other countries instead. And I can only tell, dear Mr. Lindner, you are calling for reduction in bureaucracy, but please take yourself at by your own word so that we can continue to be served the beautiful words of foreign authors in German. For example, the words of our guest from Italy, whom I'd like to welcome very warmly. This year, Italy, as a culturally rich nation that has a diverse tradition and also brings a broad canon of new literary voices to Frankfurt. I look forward to many discoveries and wish you a successful and inspiring book fair. Thank you.
Ich habe ein großes Talent.
I am very talented in knocking over glasses, so I'll just put it aside. And I also need some reading glasses too. Ladies and gentlemen, the fact that we invite to this press conference to this Frankfurt Pavilion regularly is no accident. We're not just presenting the overwhelming part of our culture policy program. The place itself is a program. Because Frankfurt Pavilion is very accessible, has 3 entrances, it's very transparent, has a bright design, and has an inviting atmosphere, albeit it may be slightly cold today. But it's an example of what I would call democratic architecture. It's the ideal place for free, open exchange, for argument, for opinion forming. This has been confirmed officially, by the way, because of its special architecture. Frankfurt Pavilion has become part of the Hessian Design for Democracy campaign. The Frankfurt Rhine-Main region has received the title World Design Capital 2026. And now, so you're in the center of the stage for democratic discourse, which Frankfurt Book Fair has always been. But now let's turn from form to content. Where we are now, we'll have passionate debates, readings, and performances in the next few days. And this culture policy program has its own name, some kind of sub-brand, as people in creative agencies would say, Frankfurt Calling, Perspectives on Culture and Politics. Well, Frankfurt Calling, some of us may hear some similarities with a punk rock song from London by The Clash, but that's of course pure coincidence. Frankfurt Calling has strong-minded authors in the program: Roberto Saviano, Mighty Nguyen Kim, Omri Böhm, Eva Menasse, Yuval Noah Harari, Atef Abu Saif, and Anne Applebaum. The topics range from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the war in the Middle East, but also to current discourse about black feminism, artificial intelligence and language, as well as the worldwide rise of populism. Such an ambitious program is organized by many partners, such as the United Nations, Amnesty International, Memorial, the German pen clubs, the International Publishers Association, the research network Corrective, Taz, Süddeutsche Zeitung, and the Anne Frank Educational Institution, and many others. It's important to me to say that this format is different from the usual TV talk shows, because for Frankfurt Calling, the sore points of the present will be viewed from the literary perspective and from a position of artistic freedom, a kind of freedom which every author of this world has for his or her storytelling, or we could say a kind of freedom which every author should have on this earth. It is not a matter of course, because the freedom of storytelling is curtailed in many regions of the world. That's why I recommend to you, as your journalists, this is a special following panel. Storytelling is a human right. Authors read, reflect, and relate their work to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. This panel is part of the program, and we've organized it together with the UN. Publication freedom is part of human rights, which the United Nations stand for, with speakers such as Dmitry Gluchovsky, who also are committed to freedom in a political sense. So much for the political part of the fair. Now let's turn to the Frankfurt Book Fair as a trading platform. Trade also needs freedom, and I'll continue with Dmitry Gluchovsky. This author is a frequent guest in Frankfurt and has seen adaptations of his dystopias in films and games. It's a great example of the success model book to screen. So our exhibitors with good stories have a good market for themselves, waiting for themselves. That's why book to screen is an important topic on this fair now. We extend our business with rights and licenses on this biggest trading place for contents. There are exhibitors such as Netflix, and then we also have a new games business center for book to screen. Also, we have a book to screen day on Friday with a lot of response, or good response. 50 international publishers, agencies, films and TV production companies and film scouts participate in the book to screen matchmaking event in cooperation with Berlinale. At this point I also would like to mention our cooperation with the Bologna Book Fair. So when we cooperate with Bologna in terms of games, we are no competition, we are complementary. So I think it's great that the industry is trying to support each other. So if you have one competence, you pass on the competence to the other in order to help the industry to stay relevant. So when we talk about digital aspects of publishing, the topic of artificial intelligence should not be lacking. As we've just heard from the President, no matter what your personal take on it is, the changes in this technology are massive, especially in our industry. That's why we dedicate special programs to artificial intelligence in 8 events. Did you know that the big digital platforms have more than 50,000 audiobooks just generated by AI voices? If this sounds creepy to you, well, on our area for audiobooks, instead of artificial intelligence, you will hear authors, podcasters, and speakers live, and you can actually make interviews with them. So much for the trading platform and digital themes. The real literary life, storytelling about real people, real lives, and real feelings are very present today. Be inspired by authors like Ijaba Jego and her post-colonial literature, by Vincenzo Latronico and his novel about young Italians in Berlin, or by Claudio Dorastanti's autofictional work between Rome and Brooklyn. They all stand for a modern, diverse, and young Italy. It presents itself in the Guest of Honor Pavilion, which was designed by the architect Stefano Boeri as a piazza, and you can take a look at this yourselves during the press tour which is following this event. Let's turn from new Italian literature, another new topic as part of the book fair, the Literature Festival. In Hall 1.2, we open up a place for a genre which is keeping the young world of readers on their toes, new adult on 8,000 square meters. Why do you make this effort? Because Frankfurt Book Fair is constantly changing, because we pick on new developments of the market and make them visible in Frankfurt. That's why we offer the new adult area to the publishers and the audience. What's happening there has the character of a convention rather than a conventional fair. It's about a fan-driven event around autographs, around selfies with authors and stars from special genres. This love of reading, this fandom, is offered in the form of a big stage in Hall 1.2. Our new areas and programs also show you the shape literature can take. In the cultural policy program Frankfurt Calling, literature helps us to orient ourselves in stormy times, be it a non-fiction book or a politically inspired novel. However, the literature of the new adult area offers us some kind of escapism in the best sense of the word. Subgenres like romantasy, dark college, and Regency romance will take literature fans into parallel worlds with their own order. From parallel worlds, however, we also seem to have an author to whom I will pass the floor soon. London, Ankara, Madrid, Amman are just a few of her stations in her biography, and I keep meeting her at international festivals. Last time we met was in Reykjavik. To me, as an author, she is someone who weaves worlds together. In her current novel, There Are Rivers in the Sky, she is spinning a thread from biblical Mesopotamia via Victorian London to present-day Iraq, and all this is linked by water, would you believe? And to be more precise, a drop of water. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us take you on a journey, a mental journey with the great author Elif Shafak.
Thank you so much for this warm introduction, but also for creating this beautiful oasis of ideas for all of us. I think this is a very strange time to be alive. It's a very strange time to be a writer in a world that remains deeply polarized and bitterly politicized and torn apart by inequality and wars and the cruelty that we're capable of inflicting upon each other, but also on Earth, which is our only home. In such a troubled world, one might ask, what can writers and poets even hope to achieve? What place is there for stories and imagination when tribalism and destruction and othering keep speaking more loudly and often more boldly? Now, if I may take you back in time a little bit, those of us who are old enough, we will remember another moment in history not that long ago when there was a mood, a sentiment of optimism in the air. This was after the collapse of the Berlin Wall. The Soviet Union had dissolved, and there was this assumption that it was going to be the triumph of liberal democracy everywhere. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, I think the biggest optimists were tech optimists. They told us that thanks to the proliferation of digital technologies, information was going to become easy to achieve. Information was going to spread everywhere. And so people would become informed citizens, and informed citizens would make informed decisions, and they would elect the right leaders. And in this way, democracy would spread all across the globe. History, they told us, could only move in one direction, linear, straightforward. But I think as storytellers, we never treat time like that. For us, time is more cyclical. And we know that time sometimes moves forwards, but sometimes it goes backwards. So there's no guarantee of a linear, straightforward history. And I think it was very important to make a distinction between information, knowledge, and wisdom. They're not the same thing. Now, fast forward, today, we live in a world in which we have way too much information, but little knowledge and even less wisdom. And I think we need to change that ratio. What's happening is snippets of information rain on us every single day. As we scroll up and down our social media feeds, more out of habit than out of anything else, we have no time to process. We have no time to absorb, and we have no time to feel what we see. Hyperinformation gives us the illusion of knowledge. The truth is, we have long forgotten how to say, I don't know. When was the last time we ever said, I don't know? You can ask me anything. If I don't know the subject, I can Google it. in the next minutes, I'll be able to say a few words about the subject, giving me the illusion that I know something, but in truth, I know nothing. So I think to be able to say I don't know was an important starting point for philosophy, for literature, for communication, and we lost that. For true knowledge, not information, but for true knowledge, we have to slow down because it cannot be rushed. We need to listen to each other, and we need cultural spaces such as this precious space. We need literary festivals, we need slow journalism, and we need books. And then, of course, there's wisdom. For wisdom, I think we need to bring the heart into our work. We need to bring the heart into our conversations. For wisdom, we need to build emotional intelligence, and we need empathy. For wisdom, we need literature. Now, I'm not claiming that we writers are wise people. Surely, we are not. But what I am claiming is when we write fiction, we connect with something that is bigger than us, and older than us, and definitely wiser than us. And that something is the art and craft of storytelling. It is universal, it is ancient, it does not belong to any tribe or region or religion. It cannot be confined into any borders. Sorry. As a novelist, I'm deeply interested in ecofeminism, which aims to connect the dots between seemingly separate subjects. For instance, today, of the most 10 water-stressed nations in the world, 7 are in the Middle East and in North Africa. Our rivers are dying. Now, all around the world, women, usually young women and children, are water carriers. They bring water to their communities. When the rivers die, when there's no water nearby, the distance that a woman has to walk increases, unfortunately, increasing the potential for gender violence. So if we care about water scarcity, we have to care about gender inequality. If we care about gender inequality, we have to care about racial inequality, and so on. I think the literary mind cannot be isolationist. The art of storytelling is all about connections. As writers, of course, we adore stories, but I believe we are equally drawn to silences, the things we cannot easily talk about. Anyone whose story has been erased, pushed to the margins, or forgotten, our pens and our hearts organically move in that direction, towards anyone who's been made to feel like they were the other. Literature brings the periphery to the center, and it has the ability to rehumanize people who have been dehumanized. But for us to be able to do this, we have to become memory keepers. And I think this is what the author Toni Morrison meant when she talked about memory as a healing agent, memory as something that gives voice to pain and restores dignity to places where dignity is broken. Now, when I think of the history that's taught to us in Turkey, most of the history that we learn at school is his story. And by that I mean the story of a few men in positions of power and privilege, sultans and Sheikhul Islams. The moment you start asking questions about women, how was life like in the Ottoman Empire for ordinary women? There's a silence. How was life like for a Kurdish peasant, for an Arab farmer, for an Armenian silversmith, for a Jewish miller, for a Greek sailor? What was it like for them? There's a silence. So I think if you're interested in untold stories as a writer, you have to become a bit like a literary and cultural archaeologist. You need to dig deep through layers of history and layers of silences. I also find it very important that we try to bridge the gap between written culture and oral culture. In the age of hyperinformation, instant gratification, fast consumption, and climate destruction, I think literature is and has to be an act of hope and an act of resistance. Not resistance through force, but through its capacity to remind us of our shared humanity. If I may conclude with maybe a few more thoughts. Doris Lessing has this beautiful idea where she talks about literature as something that occurs after the event. She says literature is analysis after the event. And I understand that. Things happen, writers need time to absorb, and then we write. And that's true. But in this age, because I think we've entered a new world, literature has to be both analysis after the event, but also analysis during the event, whilst things are happening. But how do we do that? How do we find the will to keep writing? How do we keep the faith in literature up? It's not easy, because this is the age of angst. An existential angst affects all of us. I think wherever you look, east and west, north and south, people are anxious. The only difference is some people hide it better than others. I think that's the only difference. So there are lots of seemingly negative emotions: anxiety, anger, frustration, bitterness, and resentment. How do we find, the positive energy to keep going? I think all of these emotions can be seen as sources of raw energy. We can turn them into something more positive. The only emotion that really, really frightens me is the lack of all emotions. It's the absence of all emotions, which is numbness, which is apathy. And I believe this world we're living in will become a much more dangerous and broken place if this age of angst were to become an age of apathy. The moment we stop caring, the moment we stop writing, and the moment we stop talking about what's happening in Gaza today, what's happening in Ukraine today, what's happening in Sudan today, the moment we become desensitized and atomized and indifferent and numb, I think this is precisely what the philosopher Hannah Arendt warned us about. Literature is the antidote to numbness. I know writers cannot stop wars. We cannot even stop hatred. But what we can do is we can keep the flame of peace and coexistence and empathy and human dignity alive. I think literature's power is that it reminds us of what we are capable of, which is not only destruction and division, but also beauty, solidarity, sisterhood, and love. Thank you.
To Elif, but actually I don't want to ask them. I'm so touched by your speech. I don't know, it's important. I don't know, but I want to know. I want to read. I want to think. I want to understand. I want to listen to people. That's so important. And the other thing about his story and her story also touched me very much. I never thought about it, but you're right completely. So what's left to say for me before I hand over to Torsten? I'm very touched. I could cry. Thank you.
So that's the greatest missing interview, which I haven't heard in years. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elif, for these great ideas, and thank you, Juergen, for the best reaction to this best speech imaginable. And for you, of course, this is two advantages, because you can start firing away with your questions and comments. Do we have roving microphones? I think we do. We do. Yes. So you can always just raise your hands and Just wait for the microphones to arrive. There is a question in the back. The gentleman standing there. Thank you very much. Felix Hück, Lima Gris, Peru. About the book talk people and the fandom and the new adult reading people. I would like to hear some more remarks about the cooperation with the Children's Book Fair in, I forget